Hi, my name's Nick Broughton and I'm a Randomfish. Hit that subscribe button and let's be Randomfishes together. So, I just watched Star Wars Infinity War. Well, actually, technically speaking, I watched it about 8 hours ago. Or I started watching it about 8 hours ago. This movie is 3 hours long. That should give you a fairly decent indication about its ability. Frankly, this movie has a little bit of what I like to call Return of the King syndrome, in that it has these endings that are sort of stockpiled on top of one another. But unlike Return of the King, where everyone was sort of going, "Oh my god, when's this film going to shut up and go away?" The endings work. The endings to each of the characters work well on top of each other. Like, they work well, built on one on top of another, one on top of the other, and it's nice. It's great to see. My overall thoughts on this film is, holy shit. It just those two words, holy shit. I put up a small video on Facebook, on Instagram, of me saying that I cried when I was watching this movie. This movie made me cry, and yes, it did. It 100% made me cry. And honestly, yes, it should. This movie should make you cry. I'm not against movies being something you can just sit and watch, but in my experience, if you're really getting into a movie and you can escape your own life by watching this movie and you feel incredible and it sucks you in from the second it hits the screen, it's done its job. Done its job. And that's been Marvel from the get-go. That's been Marvel since Iron Man. That has kept me interested, despite all the so-called shitty movies, the shittier movies, I should say, that people keep on talking about, the ones that are in like the lower pantheon of people's liking of Marvel. These films all hit bullseyes for me, and this one takes those bullseye hits and fires all of them again blindfolded. I mean, this is a film that I don't think could have missed in any way, shape or form, because it was the finale to something so incredibly grand. Such passion that was put behind it. You cannot begin to imagine the kind of hype that even the filmmakers must have felt, much less the audience, much like us, those of us that were in the cinema. I don't want to talk spoiler-free. I don't. And if you've seen the film, then you'll know exactly why I don't want to talk spoiler-free. So, for those of you who are not... Those of you who haven't seen the film yet, you should not be watching this video. Hashtag don't spoil the Endgame was a thing for a reason. So, please go away, please watch the film, and then come back to here, or to any of the other 1,000,001 people who have written about, who've done vlogs or reviews of this film so far. I was inspired to do this video primarily from the two channels that I watch the most when it comes to Marvel films or Star Wars films that have been released, and those are the likes of Channel Awesome and Kevin Smith, ironically enough. Kevin Smith, he talks about these films like a fanboy, and he describes them like a fanboy, and he loves them like a fanboy, and that's brilliant. Channel Awesome tries to look at them as as critiquing as possible. They try and look at it as critical as possible. They try and look at it as critics, not as fans. Again, I can understand both sides of this equation, but when I was watching both of these ones, I preferred watching Kevin's video than I did Channel Awesome's. And that's not a slide on them. That is a slide. That is just how I feel. I didn't watch this film as a wannabe film critic. I watched this film as a fanboy, because that's what it did to you. That's what this film does to you. It turns you into the truest fanboy that you could ever possibly be. This, to me, felt almost exactly the same excitement and rush as I felt watching Force Awakens in the cinema at that midnight screening all that time ago. It turned me into a kid. And it was so good, and it was so well executed. It was beyond brilliant. So I'm going to go into spoilers now. If you haven't watched it, please go watch it first, and then come back here and watch this video if you want. You know what? I'm even going to do an Infinity War style click, so I can eliminate those of you who don't have access to it, who shouldn't be here. No, I'm not wearing an Infinity Gauntlet, or have any of the Infinity Stones. Wow, that was really a mistake on my part, wasn't it? Jeez. Oh well, we live and we move on, and that's kind of how this film begins, with people saying how they should try and move on with their lives. Actually, that's not how the movie begins at all. The movie begins with Robert Downey Jr. and Karen Gillan playing, obviously, Tony Stark, or Tony Stank, if you want to use the Civil War name, and Nebula stuck in space, thinking they're dead, and being rescued by Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. Now, I unfortunately haven't seen Captain Marvel yet. This is not good. No, I haven't seen Captain Marvel yet, but that was more to do with I had a bigger desire to watch Endgame than I did to watch Captain Marvel. I honestly didn't care enough about her origins to consider it to be permanently possible to what I wanted to watch in terms of film in the cinema. I wanted to watch Endgame in the cinema because of its grandeur. I will watch Captain Marvel eventually. I just didn't see as big a desire. I just didn't have as big a desire to see Captain Marvel as I did for Endgame. So, obviously, this is not a slide against Brie Larson or any of the people at Marvel for making Captain Marvel at all. That's not it. My issue came more from the fact that I see Captain Marvel almost the same as I see Doctor Strange, in that I don't feel like I need to know the origin. I'm just happy to know that they're in the movie. Again, I've watched Doctor Strange, but again, I waited till it was out on DVD. Kind of the same way how I did with Ant-Man and the Wasp, actually, but that's a different story for a different time. But Captain Marvel it turns up in space and helps them get back home. Nebula and Rocket share a moment. Tony has a go at Steve for being an ass. Says to him stuff like, "You abandoned us, now we've got to fix this, and you want me to do favours for you, fuck you." And he walks away, not actually using those words, obviously. But the movie itself, they track down Thanos pretty quickly, and they go down to kick his ass. And they do, with Thor cutting off his arm. They realise that he destroys all the Infinity Stones because he honestly doesn't see the point in them anymore, because he's done what he wanted to do, aka wipe out 50% of all living things. So he had to eliminate the stones to stop causing more damage. He didn't feel like they needed to exist anymore, so he used them to destroy themselves. As this concept sort of ends, Thanos gets beheaded by a very pissed off Thor using Stormbreaker, which was very weird. And then we shoot to the 5 years later situation, with Cap sat around with a bunch of people at a help group saying that, we need to learn how to move on without the people that we love in our lives. Black Widow's trying to keep things organised on Earth as well as off-world, because obviously thousands of worlds that exist are all suffering the same thing as Earth is, and Earth's the only one with Avengers. So Captain Marvel's sort of going from planet to planet, helping out and doing all that sort of thing. And various other formats. Rhodey is doing some hunting of a character who we didn't see in Infinity War, but we do see at the very, very beginning of this movie, right before the credits actually start, right at the start, the very, very beginning of the movie, Hawkeye. And we see what we unfortunately kind of predicted would happen at the end of Infinity War with his family being wiped out. It was sad because obviously in Infinity War I made this prediction in my head where I was like, they're not going to kill off Hawkeye, but they probably will kill off his family. I predicted they would kill off. I didn't think his entire family. I thought maybe just his wife and daughter, maybe, or maybe his wife and his in the infant inside her. Maybe she's still pregnant. I don't know, but the fact of the matter was that it was a very weird situation, and it was a very weird thing. 5 years obviously pass, and Rhodey's tracking Hawkeye, and he is killing off gangsters. He is killing off crime syndicates left and right, and he's doing it very viciously. And Widow is very, very aware and doesn't want to sort of attack him or take him down because she thinks he's just working off steam, and that that they need him more than they need to take him down. And Rhodey's just like, I don't know. We also then get Scott Lang. At the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, if you remember entirely, he goes into the quantum realm for a little bit of a checkout and to sort of see if he can do anything. And he's talking over the intercom, and you see Janet, Hank Pym, and his wife disappear into nothingness. Obviously, the case of the snap. And at which point you then get the very real point and the very real possibility. Obviously, Scott gets brought back from the quantum realm by a rat messing around on the controllers. So the rat is responsible for saving the human race, really. Scott comes barreling out and ends up tracking down the Avengers and finding out what the hell's happened. He realizes his daughter's still alive, but obviously she's grown up because it's been 5 years and it's been a long ass time. He then tries to convince Cap and Nat, who are the only ones at the compound at this point. Tony's disappeared. Thor is in his home in New Asgard, which is on Earth, obviously. And he talks to them about using the quantum realm to possibly time travel to a point where they can get the stones to try and undo what Thanos did, i.e. re-snap their fingers and the whole world comes back. Again, very interesting concept. One that was predicted very early on in the beginning of things, because they sort of recognised the fact that the suits they were wearing in the trailer looked an awful lot like quantum suits from Ant-Man and the Wasp. So, kind of cool there to see that. And it was cool to see that sort of thing come out in proper. At which point you then get them going to Tony, who has obviously married Pepper and had a daughter. I'm going to be honest, this did mark Tony. This marked him to die in the film, to me. It marked him as a possible dead character, because he had a daughter and he had a family, he was happy. It's the Magneto effect. Have a family, be happy, all of a sudden either family dies or you die. It's one or the other. So he says no and goes back into the house with his daughter and with, Pepper. And so they go to the next person, possibly, who can help them, called who's obviously Bruce Banner. In this version, you get a mixture of Bruce and Hulk. Hulk obviously no longer wanting to fight for Banner and just be Banner's plaything, as it were, in Infinity War, made Bruce have to take a look at what he was seeing the Hulk as, and he very much learned or figured out how to combine his brains with the Hulk's brawn to make it into possibly one of the most amazing combinations ever, and it was great. It was great to sort of see it. These films did a great job with Bruce, and I think this was a perfect compromise and a decent sort of ending, if you will, to the Bruce Hulk story, which I think is nice to see. It's wonderful to see. He then agrees to help them, and fails miserably to do so because obviously he's looking at it from an angle that's not great. And you also get Tony then figuring out that he can help them, and then goes in to help them because of a Pepper pep talk. They then travel through time upon realizing what they can do and where they can go for these things, you then get Widow having to go off and find Hawkeye, or at this point, as he's known, Ronin. Ronin, not Ronan. Just a psychopathic assassin killing off gangsters. Looks a bit more badass. Looks slightly dangerous. You know, all that kind of thing. And Hulk then goes off to try and get Thor. And we get possibly the best looking Thor. Not the best looking Thor, I'm sorry. The most realistic looking Thor, if you will. He's got a bit of a gut. He's got long hair. He's got the bushy beard. And he just doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit. He's a coward. He's run away from his concept. It is nice, however, to see everyone walk into New Asgard and see the Asgardians still alive. Not every Asgard died on that ship in Infinity War. Ha! I friggin' knew it. There's a reason why Valkyrie wasn't dead in that shot. There's a reason why Korg wasn't in that shot. There's a reason why Meek wasn't in that shot. They're all fucking alive in that movie. Hells yeah. I love it. Thor is, of course, eventually persuaded to go by Hulk, and they all jump into time. And they all go to different points. They go to the attack in New York to find 3 of the crystals, 3 of the stones that are already there. That being the Mind Stone, the Space Stone, and the Time Stone, because the Time Stone is obviously still with the Sorcerer Supreme, or the Ancient One, if you want to use the proper name. Obviously played by Tilda Swinton. She's back! However briefly, in this movie. Lovely. Great to see. You also get a cap battle, which is cool. You get to hear Captain America fool a whole bunch of Hydra agents by simply whispering "Hail Hydra," and they all think that he's on their side, and he walks away with the staff, and it's brilliantly fun to watch. You do see something weird happen with the Space Stone and with Loki. That's kind of a pain in the ass. I don't know what exactly they did to the canon with that change. That kind of pissed me off, because I don't quite know what they've done. Everything seems to still be normal. Stormbreaker is still a thing, and Mjolnir never, Ragnarok appears to still have happened, and all this sort of crap has happened, and blah blah blah. I would very much like to not have to deal with a whole bunch of this stuff. Although, I'll be absolutely honest, it is kind of interesting that, even... Because obviously they jump to different points in time, but Thor and Rocket jump to Dark World, Thor the Dark World, where the Ether is at the time. And when they get there, Loki's still in his prison. So it is at least a little bit possible that things got corrected in that time period, but I don't know. They get all 3 eventually. They get the first 2 from that point in time, and then they get the Tesseract, or the Space Stone, from the 70s, from when S.H.I.E.L.D. is first being formed, and Tony gets to have a little moment with his dad, which is lovely, and it's nice to see that sort of character development happen on screen. Lovely. You then have Nebula and Rhodey go off to Morag, where Quill obviously discovers the Power Stone. They knock his ass out, and they take the Power Stone. But at this point, you then get 2 Nebulas in the same time zone, and because their technology is the same, their Nebula of the past, the one that's still loyal to Thanos, is a little bit hacked, and Thanos discovers the entire plan, which is a little bit of a bitch slap. And then you also get Hawkeye and Nat go to Voromir, where the Soul Stone is, in an attempt to get the Soul Stone before Thanos does. And obviously Red Skull is still there, working as the guide there, and he tells them obviously what he told Thanos: a soul for a soul. Hawkeye and Black Widow both fight over who gets to jump and who gets to die, in order so the other one may get the Soul Stone. And in the end, it is, sorry, but Black Widow's gone, which is kind of sad. Not the thing that made me cry, though, actually, kind of bizarrely enough. everyone gets back with all the stones and everything's fine. And all of that stuff sort of happens. But Nebula is captured. And Thanos... And the evil Nebula, if you will, the past Nebula, the one who works for Thanos, comes back with, instead of the our Nebula, the good Nebula. And she lets Thanos in into their time period. At which point, during that whole bit, you then get the Avengers creating an Iron Man style glove that could contain all the Infinity Stones, making it their own version of an Infinity Gauntlet. Hulk then puts it on and snaps his fingers and presumably brings everybody back, which is lovely, and you do get that. And then Thanos attacks and blows up the entire friggin' Avengers compound, which is a friggin' insane thing. Oh, and I forgot to mention, during the whole bit on Dark World, Thor talks to his now dead mum, and he actually gets Mjolnir back, and he then travels into the present holding Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, which is kind of cool. The other more interesting thing is, obviously, after Thanos blows up the compound, they try and capture the stones. There's a whole thing involving past Gamora talking to present Nebula. There's all this. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens with all of that. The other major thing is the three big guys from the Avengers, obviously that being Thor, Iron Man, and Captain America, all march out to meet past Thanos, and they all try and fight him and kick his ass. The really big bit is that we get to see a nice little finish off to the Age of Ultron scene when they're all trying to lift Thor's hammer. Captain America can wield Thor's hammer. I'm not going to lie, that's where I was really happy. I kind of predicted that that was going to happen at some point, but I didn't know when. And I was really pleased that it happened in this movie, actually. I was really pleased that it happened in this movie. And you got to see Cap fighting with Mjolnir, and it still creates lightning. So that does enforce the ultimate setup. That Mjolnir was the thing that cast lightning, but Thor already had that power inside of himself, but Mjolnir was just a crutch to use until he could harness it for himself. Until he was able to control it inside himself. That's what Mjolnir was for. Which is great. And then you see... And then Thanos kind of half breaks the shield, which kind of brings Vibranium into question. Although, I'll be honest, if you had a slightly psychopathic mad titan punching your shield multiple times, I'm fairly sure anything would break under that kind of pressure. And then he brings out his entire army, including all four of his henchmen, including that jackass Ebony Maw, or Space Squidward, as Iron Man calls him. The entire army of Chitauri and all of his warriors all come through, all ready to kick some ass and fight. And then you get the moment that really made me cry. The moment where every hero came back. And they all appeared through portals made by Doctor Strange and Wong. And it was glorious. And it was so beautiful. And you saw Black Panther appear first. And then you saw Doctor Strange and Wong and all the students of the Ancient One. And Spider-Man and the Guardians and everything, and it was genius, absolute freaking genius. The entire army of Black Panther, Wakandan warriors, and all of these Ancient One students, and all of that, all attack Thanos' army, and they kick some serious ass. The entire fight scene is just beautifully done. Everyone gets their moment. Everyone kicks some ass. And of course, you do eventually get the very cool, very badass moment when Thanos tries to take back the Infinity Gauntlet so that he can do the one thing that he wants to do now, which is to not eliminate half the population, but to eliminate the universe and reboot it as he sees fit, and bring about a whole new generation of people to live in that universe who don't know what he did, so none of them will fight back. That's his reason for coming back in time. Because he learns that that's what happens. He manages to do what he wants, but there's still people who resent him after they try and reverse what's happened. So he has to find a way of stopping them from wanting to stop him again, even if it's already been done. Which just cements Thanos as an even more brilliant villain. It really does. And the whole thing, he gets the gauntlet back, and he says what he says before Thanos, Thor beheaded him in the opening scenes, where he says, "I am inevitable." And he clicks his fingers, and he looks at the gauntlet, and none of the Infinity Stones are on there, and Iron Man stands there with his armor activated, making the holes. The Infinity Stones all enter it. He glows, he freaks out, and he goes, "And I am Iron Man." Click. Boom! Every bad guy, dust. In the entirety of the army. The whole army, dust. Ebony Maw, dust. Even Thanos is dusted. Bit of a Deus Ex Machina ending, but let's face it, the whole comic book world is full of Deus Ex Machina moments. Let's fucking face it, that was still a cool ending. Still a cool way to end the bad guy. Unfortunately, of course, when you see Hulk do it, when he brings people back, he nearly dies. So, remember when I said that Tony seemed like he was going to die because he had a family? I was wrong about Hawkeye dying in Age of Ultron, but I was not wrong about Tony. Yeah, this is very sad. It's very sad to see. They have a funeral for him and everything else, which is very cool to see. And you see all the characters all stood there, all paying their respects, including Hank Pym, which I think is a very, very cool shout out. Because even though he hated Howard Stark's guts, he knows that Tony was better. And he knows Tony was the better choice and was the better character. And it's awesome. You even see the kid that helped him out in Iron Man 3, which is very cool to see. We get a moment between Hawkeye and Wanda, obviously, because obviously Vision's still dead. Vision never existed, technically speaking. The Mind Stone never actually happened. And of course Natasha is still gone because they couldn't bring her back because she didn't die with the snap. She died getting the Soul Stone. However, you also then get Cap being sent back in time to drop off the various stones at their various points. And then you get something even more interesting. Because Steve then decides to stay back in time and decides to get with Peggy Carter. And decides to actually have a life and decides to get married and decides the war is over for him. And you get him as an old man sat on a bench, and he gives the shield to Sam Wilson, not Bucky Barnes, but Sam Wilson, which is a good thing for anyone in the Marvel universe, in Marvel comic book universe, because you know what that means. You know what we get next. You get Falcon America, people, and it just sort of ends there, and it's beautiful. It's sad, but so beautiful. You see all the characters come back and see each other. You see Peter Parker reunited with Ned, which is wonderful to see. You get to see all of these characters, all of them reunited with their loved ones, and it's so beautiful. Thor goes off with the Guardians and leaves Valkyrie in charge of New Asgard, which is kind of cool. Just so many tie-ups and so many endings, and it's just so well done. Now, I don't know if Captain Marvel left again. She might have done, because obviously she got the rest of the universe to look after still. So we'll just have to see on that front. Obviously, Tony Stark is now... There is no more Iron Man. Or there may be in the future. We don't know. We have yet to see if anyone's going to take up that mantle. Hulk is still Hulk, but with Banner's brain, which is awesome. And just this movie, I can't describe it any more than I already have. It's beautiful. It's the perfect finale of one of the biggest multi-movie events that have ever been used in this setup. Greater than Star Wars, greater than the Disney films, greater than any of it. Because this is these are movies done as comics, where each of them tells their own separate story, but they all come together to tell one big story. And the finale has just happened. We've just come to the final page. And all of this done in the name of one of the most brilliant men to have ever put ink to pen and to paper. One of the best men ever to grow a moustache. And someone who, very frankly, these movies are all he's doing. So frankly, Stan Lee, since you're up there and you're watching, be proud of Endgame. Because you inspired enough people to be able to pull this off. And just before I finish off this video, I just want to, as a moviegoer and as a comic book fanboy and as a movie fanboy in general, I want to say thank you to the Russo brothers. I want to say thank you to the cast. I want to say thank you to everyone who worked on these movies and beyond. And I want to thank everyone who will work on the movies after this, because you will have an even tougher job of trying to top this lot. People, we have entered possibly the best age of movies. And nothing is ever going to be better or worse than this. Nothing will get better. It'll just have to try its best to be different. The next villain, I have no idea. I'm hoping Galactus. Maybe Doctor Doom gets involved. I don't know. I'm hoping Loki does pop around and comes back. I would love to see that. And yeah. People, if you've watched this video and you haven't seen Endgame, then I'm disappointed in all of you. I really am. But if you have watched it and you enjoyed it, please give a like to this video if you enjoyed this little talk about it. Write me in the comments, write your favourite part, or write your favourite character, or write someone that you're going to miss in this section. And even better, try and write out what you think could be a prediction for another movie. Who could be the next Iron Man? What will Bucky do? Will he stay Winter Soldier or will he become something different? People, the comment page is yours. But for now, Randomfish out.